There are battles that shake mountains. There are wars that swallow worlds. And then there are collisions so absolute, so beyond comprehension, that reality itself begins to forget what it was supposed to be. This was one of those moments. Saitama stood on the surface of a dying moon, his red cape barely moving in the vacuum of space. His expression hadn't changed in the last 17 minutes. Mild annoyance. The kind you feel when a fly keeps buzzing near your ear. Except the fly was a being who had absorbed the power of a cosmic entity and could now replicate the techniques of gods. Garou hovered opposite him, his body no longer entirely human. Cosmic energy rippled across his skin like living constellations. His hair moved as though underwater, each strand tracing patterns of an evolution that refused to stop. His eyes burned with something beyond rage, beyond ambition. This was obsession given form. This was the desperate hunger of someone who believed that if he could just push a little further, adapt a little faster, become a little stronger, he could finally touch the absolute. He was wrong, of course, but he didn't know that yet. "You're strong," Garou said, his voice echoing strangely in the void. "Stronger than anything I've fought, stronger than the heroes, stronger than the monsters, stronger than gods." Saitama scratched his head. "Okay, but I'm evolving," Garou continued, his fists clenching as energy gathered around him in spirals of impossible color. "Every second I'm adapting, every moment I'm surpassing my limits. Eventually I'll reach you, and then I'll surpass even you." "Sure." The lack of reaction should have been infuriating. It was infuriating. Garou's power spiked again, his form shifting as he absorbed techniques from dimensional echoes he shouldn't have been able to perceive. He moved faster than light, struck with force that could shatter star systems, combined martial arts that defied physics with cosmic energy that rewrote the rules of causality itself. Saitama blocked with one hand. The shockwave erased the moon they stood on. The debris field spread outward in a perfect sphere, each fragment moving at relativistic speeds. Nearby planets trembled in their orbits. Space stations 3 systems away registered seismic anomalies that made no scientific sense. Garou didn't stop. He couldn't stop. His evolution accelerated with his desperation. He copied Saitama's movements, his power, his efficiency, but there was always something missing. Some fundamental element that refused to be replicated. It was like trying to copy infinity. You could add more zeros, stretch the numbers further and further, but you'd never actually reach it. "Why won't you take this seriously?" Garou's voice cracked with something almost like pain. "I'm giving everything. I'm becoming something beyond mortal, beyond God, beyond." Saitama punched him. It wasn't a special move. There was no battle cry, no charging of energy, no dramatic wind-up. Just a punch. The kind you'd throw at a particularly annoying mosquito. Except this punch carried the weight of something that had no weight, the force of something that had transcended force. Garou flew backward through 17 asteroids, 3 derelict ships, and the outer atmosphere of a gas giant before he managed to stop himself. His body was already regenerating, already adapting, already growing stronger from the damage. But something else was happening too. Something neither of them noticed in that moment. The space between them was cracking, not the physical space that was already shattered. This was something deeper. Reality itself was developing fault lines, like a mirror that had been struck too many times in the exact same spot. Every exchange between absolute power and infinite adaptation was creating resonances that shouldn't exist, harmonics that made the fundamental fabric of existence begin to unravel. Garou charged again, moving through dimensions now, attacking from angles that didn't exist. Saitama deflected casually, his movements economical to the point of insulting. They exchanged blows that could have destroyed galaxies. They moved at speeds that made time itself uncertain. And with every impact, the cracks grew deeper. "You don't understand," Garou gasped, his evolution reaching new peaks with every second. "I have to surpass you. I have to prove that effort means something, that struggle matters, that someone who claws their way up from nothing can stand equal to someone who was just born at the top." For the first time in the fight, Saitama's expression shifted slightly.
Not to anger.
Not to interest. Something else.
Something almost like recognition.
I wasn't born at the top, he said quietly. Then he threw a serious punch. The universe held its breath. The punch didn't land, not because Garou dodged, he couldn't have dodged, but because in the infinitesimal moment between intention and impact, the cracks in reality reached critical mass. The space between them didn't explode. It didn't collapse. It simply stopped being sure what it was supposed to be. Light became shadow. Distance became intimate. Cause and effect held a brief, confused conversation and decided to take a break. And then something opened. It wasn't a portal. Portals have edges, have destinations, have rules. This was a wound. A tear in the boundary between what is and what should never be. On the other side of that tear was a place where physics went to die, where mathematics sobbed in corners, where the laws of reality were less suggestions and more gentle recommendations that everyone ignored. On the other side was the warp. Garou had one moment to realize what was happening before the pull took him. His cosmic senses, so finely tuned to power and evolution, suddenly screamed warnings that made no sense. This wasn't just dangerous.
This was wrong.
This was a place where strength might mean nothing, where adaptation could be a curse, where he vanished into the tear. Saitama blinked. Then the warp took him too. The pull was strange.
Not violent, not gentle.
Just inevitable. Like gravity, except gravity at least pretended to follow rules. Saitama felt himself being drawn into the wound in reality and thought about resisting. He probably could have. He'd punched through weirder things. But there was a kind of curiosity there. A mild interest. Something different was finally happening. He let himself fall. The tear sealed behind them with a sound like a scream played backward. The battlefield or what remained of it settled into an eerie stillness. Debris floated aimlessly.
Energy signatures faded.
In a few thousand years, this region of space would be marked as a dead zone, a place where ships' instruments went haywire and navigators reported dreams of impossible battles. But Saitama and Garou were already gone, pulled into a realm where nightmares learned to be afraid, where gods played games with mortal souls, where reality was whatever the strongest emotion in the room decided it should be. They had entered the warp, and the warp had no idea what it had just let inside. The warp is not a place. Not truly. To call it a dimension is to give it more structure than it deserves. It is the collective unconscious of every thinking being in the galaxy given form and fury. It is where emotions become entities, where thoughts gain teeth, where the boundary between mind and matter dissolves into something that hungers. It should have devoured them instantly. Garou awoke, if awakening was even the right word, suspended in something that wasn't quite space. Colors that had no names screamed past him. Sounds that predated language whispered promises and threats in the same breath. He could feel the warp pressing against his mind, trying to find purchase, trying to understand what he was so it could break him down into component emotions and feed.
What it found confused it. Garou was rage, yet
fury at injustice, at the strong crushing the weak, at heroes who preached justice while enjoying their privilege. The warp latched onto that rage eagerly. But beneath the rage was discipline, martial perfection, an obsession with growth that was somehow both arrogant and humble. He wanted to surpass gods, not to rule, but to prove that effort mattered. That struggle had meaning. The warp couldn't quite digest that paradox. And Garou, for his part, felt the assault on his consciousness and did what he always did when faced with something trying to destroy him. He adapted. The psychic pressure that would have shattered mortal minds became fuel. The whispers that promised power in exchange for service became techniques to analyze and surpass. Every demon that manifested from the churning chaos around him became a new opponent to study, to fight, to grow beyond. His cosmic evolution, already accelerated to impossible heights, found a new gear. Pain became strength. Despair became determination. The warp threw horrors at him, manifestations of fear, regret, temptation. Garou fought them all with an efficiency that bordered on beautiful. His martial arts adapted to psychic combat. His cosmic awareness expanded to perceive the ebb and flow of warp currents. He was still Garou, still human in some fundamental way, but he was becoming something the warp had never encountered before. A being who grew stronger specifically because you tried to break him. Elsewhere in the screaming chaos, Saitama floated with his arms crossed. He'd been here for what might have been seconds or centuries. Time didn't really work properly in the warp, and his primary emotion was mild confusion. Things kept trying to attack him.
Weird things.
Things with too many eyes or not enough coherence. Things that howled in colors and blood mathematics. He punched them. They stopped existing. But what disturbed the warp more than his effortless violence was his utter lack of reaction to everything else. The psychic pressure that Garou was using as training weight simply slid off Saitama like water off glass. The whispers that promised power, pleasure, knowledge, glory, he didn't even seem to hear them.
Not because he was resisting.
Resistance implied effort. He just didn't care. The warp feeds on emotion. Saitama had one emotion: mild boredom. You can't corrupt boredom. You can't tempt indifference. You can't break someone who isn't attached to anything strongly enough to fear losing it. Demons manifested around him, lesser creatures at first, then greater ones when the lesser ones stopped returning. They came at him with claws that unmade reality, with screams that shattered souls, with temptations that had brought entire civilizations to their knees. Saitama punched them too. This is weird, he muttered to himself, watching as a lord of change, a greater demon of Tsinsank, a being of pure scheming malice that existed across 1,000 timelines, simultaneously dissolved into nothing after a casual backhand.
Even weirder than that time with the subterranean king.
Deep in the warp, in the palaces of impossible geometry where the chaos gods held court, 4 presences turned their attention to the anomalies. Khorne, the blood god, lord of rage and battle, felt Garou's endless struggle and grew interested. Here was a warrior who fought not for glory or bloodlust, but for the pure sake of surpassing limits. Every battle made him stronger. Every defeat was temporary. There was something almost honorable in that obsession, something that resonated with Khorne's own nature, even if the mortal refused to kill unnecessarily. But then Khorne observed Saitama and felt something it rarely experienced: confusion. Here was a being of absolute martial power who felt nothing in battle. No rage, no joy, no pride.
Just action.
Pure, effortless, meaningless action. It was like watching a fundamental force of nature fight.
Gravity doesn't feel proud when it crushes.
Lightning doesn't rage when it strikes.
Saitama simply was.
Xin-Chi, the architect of fate, the great schemer whose plots spanned millennia, and whose mind perceived 10,000 possible futures in every moment, turned its infinite gaze on both anomalies and encountered something it had not felt in eons: uncertainty. Garou's evolution made prediction impossible. Every model Xin-Chi created, every fate it tried to weave, became obsolete the moment Garou adapted beyond the parameters. He was change incarnate, but change that refused to be guided.
And Saitama? Sage couldn't even perceive his possible futures.
It was like looking at a blank wall. Every timeline that included Saitama simply showed him punching whatever the problem was, and the problem ceasing to exist. There was no complexity to manipulate, no ambition to corrupt, no hope to twist. Slaanesh, the dark prince of excess and sensation, reached for Saitama's soul-seeking pleasure, pain, pride, desire, any sensation that could be amplified and corrupted. It found nothing. Or rather, it found a void so complete that even attempting to perceive it was unsatisfying.
Saitama had no excess because he had no lack.
He wanted nothing because wanting required caring about something enough to pursue it. He was the antithesis of everything Slaanesh represented. Nurgle, grandfather of plague, lord of despair and acceptance, looked upon both and saw no purchase. Garou refused to accept limits or despair. His entire existence was defiance of stagnation. And Saitama couldn't despair because despair required investment in outcomes. For the first time in the Long War, the Chaos Gods had found beings they could not corrupt, could not predict, could not understand. And in the warp, that which cannot be understood must be destroyed. The real assault was about to begin. The warp spat them out the way a body rejects poison. Garou crashed into the surface of an Imperial world designation Saitama Tertius, a factory planet wrapped in perpetual industrial twilight with force that vaporized 3 city blocks. He rose from the crater already healing, already analyzing his surroundings. The buildings were wrong. Too brutal. Too gothic. The people fleeing in terror wore rags and looked malnourished despite working in what appeared to be weapon factories. The air tasted of promethium and desperation. His cosmic senses, still heightened from his time in the warp, could feel the oppression like a physical weight. Not just tyranny he'd fought tyrants before. This was systematic theological oppression. These people weren't just enslaved. They believed they deserved to be enslaved. That suffering was holy. That their misery served some distant, uncaring god-emperor. Garou's expression hardened. Halfway across the sector, Saitama materialized 3 meters above the trenches of Hydrus VII and fell into mud. He stood up, wiping ineffectually at his hero costume. Around him, Imperial guardsmen stared in shock. They'd been fighting chaos cultists for 6 weeks straight. They'd watched their comrades torn apart by demons, corrupted by whispers, ground down by attrition until only faith and terror kept them firing. Their commissar had executed 17 men for cowardice. Their rations had run out 4 days ago. They were children playing soldier in hell, and they knew it. And then this bald man in a yellow costume and red cape fell from the sky into their trench. "Excuse me," Saitama said, looking around.
Where am I?
Before anyone could answer, the cultists attacked. A dozen of them, their bodies twisted by chaos, blessings. Their weapons fused to mutated flesh, their screams carrying demonic resonance that had broken the minds of veteran guardsmen. Saitama looked annoyed. He punched the ground once. The shock wave propagated outward in a perfect circle, flattening cultists, collapsing trenches, and creating a crater roughly the size of a small town. When the dust settled, the immediate battlefield was silent. Every enemy within 500 meters had simply ceased to exist. The guardsmen who'd been cowering in the trenches slowly realized they were still alive and unharmed, protected by the angle of the shock wave that had somehow passed over them without causing damage.
Saitama scratched his head. Oops, that was a bit much.
A junior commissar, barely 20 standard years old, approached with his last pistol drawn and shaking. What are you?" "A hero, I guess," Saitama replied, still trying to get mud off his cape. On Saitama Tertius, Garou's arrival had not gone unnoticed. Chaos cultists, drawn by the psychic signature of someone who'd survived the warp, descended on his position with salvaged weapons and mutations that made them strong enough to tear through steel. They expected easy prey, a lost soul, traumatized and vulnerable, ripe for conversion or sacrifice.
They found something else entirely.
Garou moved through them like a theorem proving itself. His martial arts had evolved beyond anything human, beyond anything most beings in this galaxy had ever witnessed. He didn't just counter their attacks, he predicted them, adapted to them, turned their own strength against them with efficiency that seemed almost casual. A mutant with bladed arms that could cut through tank armor learned those same blades could be redirected through its own neck. A psyker who attempted to crush Garou's mind found his psychic assault analyzed, understood, and used as a template for Garou to develop his own psychic defense. Within minutes, 36 cultists lay broken. Garou stood among them, barely breathing hard, his mind already cataloging everything he'd learned about this universe's combat styles. "Weak," he muttered. "But organized. They believe in something. They have structure, hierarchy, purpose."
His eyes narrowed.
"This whole world does, a purpose built on suffering." That's when the Imperial forces arrived. The PDF Planetary Defense Force responded to both incidents with predictable doctrine. Overwhelming force. Purge first, question never. On Hydrus VII, a commissar regiment was dispatched to determine if Saitama was a sanctioned psyker. a demon in disguise, or simply a very dangerous mutant who needed to be executed before corruption spread. They found him sitting on a rock, looking bored, while guardsmen nervously tried to offer him ration bars. "By the authority of the God Emperor, identify yourself," the Lord Commissar barked, his bolt pistol aimed at Saitama's head.
"Saitama, I'm a hero for fun." "Fun?"
The word seemed to cause the Commissar physical pain. "You claim to draw power from amusement?" "I mean, I'm a hero. It's just a hobby." "A hobby?" The Commissar's hand tightened on his weapon. "Do you serve chaos?" "What's chaos?" "Do you serve the Emperor?" "I don't know who that is." Behind the Commissar, a psyker in the regiment extended his senses cautiously towards Saitama, preparing to detect any taint of chaos, any sign of demonic possession. His mind touched Saitama's presence and simply stopped. It wasn't hostile. It wasn't even dangerous. It was just a void where there should be a soul. No, not a void. Something so fundamentally simple and complete that there was nothing to corrupt, nothing to manipulate, nothing to read. The psyker stumbled backward, clutching his head. "Emperor, protect us," he whispered. "He's impossible." On Cethonus Tertius, Garou faced a different reception. The Arbite's Imperial law enforcement arrived in force, riot shields and shock mauls ready. But when they saw the crater, saw the bodies of cultists twisted into positions that suggested fatal levels of martial skill, saw Garou standing calmly in the center waiting for them, they hesitated.
A junior Arbite activated his
"Command, this is Ground Team Sigma. Target is single humanoid, no visible corruption, but psychic resonance is Emperor's teeth. It's rising. Power readings are climbing every second we observe him." Because Garou's evolution hadn't stopped. Every moment in this new universe, his body and mind adapted to its rules, its physics, its dangers. He was integrating the knowledge he'd stolen from the warp, the techniques he'd learned from cultists, the environmental data his cosmic senses provided. He was becoming something this galaxy had never seen. A being who treated adaptation itself as a weapon. Both men were taken into custody, Saitama, somewhat willingly because he didn't really care and thought they might have food. Garou strategically because he wanted to understand this civilization before deciding whether to overthrow it. The Arbites used suppressant fields, psychic dampeners, and entire companies of enforcers. Neither measure worked, but both men allowed themselves to be escorted to detention facilities anyway. Within hours, reports reached the Inquisition on both worlds. Priority classification, Omega-level anomaly.
subject classification on possibly Xeno, possibly Chaos, possibly neither.
Recommend immediate purge or containment by any means necessary.
Threat assessment, absolute.
The Inquisitors who read those reports felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. In a galaxy where demons were routine, where tyrannids devoured worlds, where orcs were an endless green tide, the word unknown was the most terrifying classification that existed. 2 unknown beings had appeared from the warp. Both survived intact. Both exceeded every combat parameter the Imperium used to measure threats. And worst of all, neither one seemed to care about the Imperium's rules, its authority, or its God Emperor. The Inquisition mobilized immediately. Inquisitor Heleth Mordrain had purged 17 worlds, executed 4 Space Marine chapter masters for suspected heresy, and once stared down a demon prince with nothing but faith and a blessed bolt pistol. She did not frighten easily.
She was frightened now.
The holding cell before her contained something that made her mind itch when she tried to perceive it. Not with demonic corruption she'd know that taint instantly. Not with Xeno's biology, though the gene scanners were returning nonsensical data. This was something else. Something that simply existed in defiance of every classification system the Inquisition maintained. "Subject designate Sigma 1, she said formally, her augmetic eye recording everything. "You will answer my questions." Saitama, sitting on the floor of a cell designed to hold greater demons, looked up with mild interest. "Okay, where are you from?" "City Z. Well, I moved apartments recently, so technically what galaxy?" "I don't know its name." "How did you enter the Imperium and survive uncorrupted?" The what? Mordrain's jaw tightened. The warp, the sea of souls, the place from which demons emerge. Oh, that weird place with all the colors. Saitama nodded. I punched things until I fell out. You punched your way out of the warp. Yeah, that's impossible. Okay. The Inquisitor made a notation on her data slate with more force than necessary. Behind her, 3 sanctioned psychers monitored Saitama from behind reinforced glass, their minds protected by wards that had taken decades to craft. None of them could sense anything from him. No emotions, no psychic presence, no connection to the warp at all. He wasn't a blank. Those pariahs caused active pain to psychers. Saitama was just absent. Like trying to read the mind of a rock, except rocks had more psychic resonance from the minerals inside them. Do you serve the ruinous powers? I don't know what that is. Do you serve the Emperor of Mankind? I don't know who that is either. Is he like a president? One of the psychers fainted. Do you feel, Mordrain continued with forced calm, any compulsion to kill, to corrupt, to spread disease, or to seek excess? Saitama thought about it. Not really. I kinda want to find a grocery store. You guys have sales here? Across the planet in another facility, Inquisitor Vorgan Kell was having a very different interrogation experience. Garou sat in a cell designed to suppress psychers, bound by chains that could restrain Astartes, surrounded by servoscles recording his every movement. He looked completely relaxed. Almost amused. You killed 17 heretics with your bare hands, Kell stated. He was older than Mordrain, more scarred, with augmetics that replaced half his face and both his eyes. Impressive. Where did you receive your training? I trained myself. Impossible. Your fighting style shows influences from 17 distinct martial disciplines, some of which don't exist in Imperial records. I copy techniques from people I fight. Garou's expression was calm, but his eyes were sharp, cataloging everything about this interrogator. Then I perfect them. Heresy. You steal the Emperor's gifts? I don't steal, I surpass. Garou leaned forward slightly. The chains creaked but held. And this Emperor you keep mentioning, he taught you that strength comes from submission? From following orders? From crushing the weak under your boots so they'll worship you properly? Kell's bolt pistol was in his hand before he'd consciously decided to draw it. You will show respect for the Master of Mankind. Respect is earned. Garou's voice didn't rise, but something in it made the servo skull's recording equipment glitch. Not demanded, not worshipped, earned through strength of character, not strength of oppression. You speak like a heretic. I speak like someone who's seen this pattern before. Heroes who become tyrants. The strong who justify stepping on the weak by calling it order, calling it necessary, calling it divine will. His eyes hardened. You're just another corrupt system. More efficient than most, but corrupt all the same. The psyker monitoring Garou sent an urgent vox message to Kell. Inquisitor, his power level is rising. Every second he speaks, every thought he has, he's growing stronger. I've never seen anything like it. Kell studied the being before him. Gene scans showed human-based genome with impossible modifications. No chaos taint, no demonic possession, no Xenos contamination. But the power readings were absurd. This prisoner, sitting calmly in chains, was showing combat potential equivalent to an Astartes.
No higher and rising. What are you?
Kell asked quietly. Garou smiled without warmth. I'm someone who refuses to stop evolving, no matter what gods or emperors stand in my way. The reports from both interrogations reached Inquisitorial Command within hours, where senior members of the Ordo Malleus reviewed them in a sealed chamber. *** Subject Sigma 1 Designation Saitama. *** No warp presence detected. Immune to psychic scanning. Combat capability. Destroyed chaos incursion with single strike demeanor. Non-hostile but completely uncontrollable threat assessment. Cannot be predicted. Cannot be contained. Cannot be compelled. Recommendation. Immediate execution via cyclonic torpedo before subject can become a greater threat. *** Subject Sigma 2. Designation Garou. *** Minor warp exposure. No corruption. Adaptive evolution confirmed. Subject grows stronger. Continuously. Combat capability. Eliminated chaos forces with efficiency matching Astartes' demeanor. Hostile to imperial authority structure. Philosophical threat. Espouses views incompatible with imperial doctrine. Threat assessment. Will inevitably surpass containment measures given time. Recommendation. Termination by Grey Knights before evolution reaches unmanageable levels. The debate that followed lasted 17 minutes. Some argued these beings could be weapons against chaos, assets too valuable to destroy. Others argued that anything the Imperium couldn't control was heresy by definition. A few suggested study, containment, careful observation. But the majority reached the same conclusion they always did when faced with the truly unknown: kill it. Kill it quickly.
Kill it thoroughly.
Burn the remains and never speak of it again. The Imperium had survived 10,000 years by eradicating anything that challenged its understanding of reality.
These two beings challenged everything.
The kill order was issued with full inquisitorial authority. What the Inquisitors didn't know, couldn't have known, was that 3 Space Marine chapters had been monitoring the interrogations remotely. And some of those Astartes were beginning to ask dangerous questions. If these beings survived the warp untainted, possessed strength beyond measure, and defied every rule the Imperium used to define corruption.
What did that say about the Imperium's understanding of strength?
The warp breach opened above Cethonus Churchus like a wound in the sky, and from it poured nightmares that had been preparing for this moment since they first sensed Garou's presence in their realm. The Imperium called it a standard chaos incursion.
Priority crimson, but manageable.
They were catastrophically wrong. Lesser demons manifested first horrors and bloodletters and plague bearers, but these were merely heralds. Behind them came greater demons, lords of change and bloodthirsters and keepers of secrets, each powerful enough to devastate cities. And behind them came something worse: chosen champions of the chaos gods themselves, mortals who had ascended through service and atrocity into something that could barely be called human anymore. They weren't here to destroy the planet. They were here to recruit Garou. In his cell, Garou felt the psychic pressure shift. The chaos forces weren't attacking randomly. They were broadcasting a message directly into his mind, bypassing the imperial dampeners like they weren't even there. Asterisk, join us. Asterisk, the voices whispered in perfect synchronization. Korn's rage, Tzanchi's ambition, Slaanesch's promise of sensation, Nurgle's acceptance, all speaking as one. Asterisk, you seek strength. We offer infinite struggle. You seek evolution. We are change incarnate. You reject gods and heroes, then become something beyond both, become chaos. Asterisk, Garou stood in his cell, chains falling from his body as his power spiked beyond what they could restrain. You don't understand. I don't serve. I don't follow. I surpass. Asterisk, then surpass us. We welcome the attempt. Asterisk, the walls of his cell melted. Not from heat, not from force, they simply stopped being certain they were solid. Garou walked through into a world already descending into pandemonium. The sky was on fire. Demons poured through the streets. Imperial forces were mounting desperate defenses that would last minutes at best. A bloodthirster, 12 meters of muscle and brass and fury, landed in front of him with a crater-forming impact. Its axe, forged from the screams of 1,000,000 murders, dripped with blood that burned through reality itself. "Fight!" it roared with a voice like worlds ending.
Grow strong, become worthy.
Garou's expression didn't change.
Finally, something interesting.
He moved. The bloodthirster was ancient, had slaughtered space marines by the chapter, had carved through tank columns like paper. Its combat experience spanned 10,000 years of the Long War. Garou analyzed its first strike, adapted to its speed, countered its second strike, and by the third exchange was matching it blow for blow. By the 10th exchange he was surpassing it. His martial arts evolved in real time, incorporating the demon's supernatural strength, its impossible reach, even the psychic resonance of its attacks. The bloodthirster realized it was going to lose. That realization only made it fight harder. Their battle carved a canyon through the industrial sector. Garou's fists broke brass. His kicks shattered demon-forged armor. And with every moment, he grew stronger, his cosmic evolution feeding on the challenge, on the danger, on the absolute necessity to adapt or die. When the bloodthirster finally fell, Garou stood over its dissolving form, breathing heavily, his body glowing with power that made the air around him shimmer. "More," he said to the chaos forces watching.
"Send me more."
They obliged. On Hydrus VII, Saitama had been eating reconstituted protein bars. They tasted terrible when the alarm started. "Oh," he said, looking up as reality tore open above the Imperial base. That again. Demons poured through, followed by Chaos Space Marines in corrupted armor, followed by something that might have once been human but was now mostly tentacles and screaming faces. The Imperial defenders opened fire with every weapon they had. Las cannons, bolters, plasma cannons, even a few pieces of ancient archaeotech that hadn't been used since the heresy. It was the kind of firepower that could level a city. The Chaos forces barely slowed. Then Saitama walked onto the battlefield. He didn't charge. He didn't rally troops or give inspiring speeches. He just walked forward with his hands in his pockets, looking mildly annoyed that his meal had been interrupted. A Lord of Change, seeing this bald figure in a ridiculous yellow costume, decided to demonstrate the futility of resistance. It wove probability, rewrote causality, turned the very concept of luck against this approaching mortal. Everything that could go wrong would go wrong. The ground beneath his feet would betray him. The air in his lungs would become poison. Reality itself would reject his existence. Saitama walked through it all without noticing. The Lord of Change, confused, decided to simply kill him directly. It gestured, and a bolt of warp fire that could erase souls from existence lanced towards Saitama's head. He caught it. "This is annoying," he said, looking at the green fire in his hand with the expression of someone who'd found gum on their shoe. He threw it back. The Lord of Change ceased to exist across 1,700 possible timelines simultaneously. A keeper of secrets tried next, weaving illusions of perfect desire, showing Saitama visions of worthy opponents, of exciting battles, of finally finding something that could challenge him. He punched through the illusions without acknowledging them. The keeper of secrets lunged with claws that unmade matter, moving faster than mortal perception, fast enough to catch bullets mid-flight, fast enough to Saitama swatted it aside like a fly. The greater demon tumbled across the battlefield, its perfect form crumpled, its pride shattered worse than its body. It looked up at Saitama with incomprehension. "What are you? A hero? That's not an answer. Your power has no source, no cost, no price. This is impossible." Saitama walked past it toward the next threat. By the time he'd crossed the battlefield, every chaos force that had entered through the breach was simply gone. Not banished, that would imply they could return. They were just erased, removed from existence with the casual efficiency of someone taking out trash. The Imperial guardsmen watched in stunned silence. Saitama scratched his head. "Is there more, or can I finish eating?" In orbit above both planets, the Chaos fleets that had been preparing to launch full invasions abruptly changed their approach. The gods themselves were conferring, their attention focused on these two impossibilities. Garou could grow to rival gods. They'd seen it, felt it. He absorbed power like a void, refined it, surpassed it. Given time, given pressure, given the right challenges, he could evolve into something that even chaos itself would have to acknowledge.
But Saitama
Already surpassed them. Not through growth, not through sacrifice, not through struggle. He simply existed at a level where gods were irrelevant. And that was infinitely more terrifying than any power that could be earned, because power that was earned could be understood, predicted, countered. Saitama was none of those things. For the first time since the war in heaven, the Chaos gods felt something they had not felt in 60 million years. Uncertainty about their own primacy. The fleets withdrew, but not in retreat. In preparation, the long war had just acquired two new variables that changed every equation. And in the galaxy below, The Imperium was about to discover that its kill order had just become very, very complicated. The Thunderhawks descended like angels of death, their engines screaming hymns of war as they cut through the ash-choked skies of Cethonus Tertius. In their holds rode the Ultramarines, 5th Company, led by Captain Titus, a warrior who had fought orcs, Tyranids, and the forces of chaos for 200 years without losing his faith in the Imperium's righteousness.
That faith was about to be tested. Target is designated Sigma 2, Titus voxed to his squad. Inquisitorial kill order is clear. The subject has engaged chaos forces. But survival of chaos exposure without corruption is itself evidence of heresy. We purge him before he can fall completely. Through his helm's display, Titus watched Garou fight. The mortal, if he could still be called that, moved through a pack of chaos cultists with efficiency that reminded Titus uncomfortably of watching mastercrafted blade work. Every motion had purpose. Every strike was exactly as strong as needed and no more. There was no wasted energy, no unnecessary violence, just pure, refined technique elevated to something approaching art. 3 bloodletters manifested behind Garou, their hell-forged blades already swinging for his neck. Garou spun, caught one blade between his palms, redirected it into the 2nd bloodletter, and used the momentum to kick the 3rd so hard it dematerialized before hitting the ground. "Emperor's mercy," one of the Ultramarines whispered. "He fights like Brother Captain Sicarius. He fights better," another corrected quietly. Titus felt something twist in his chest. Pride? Concern?
He'd devoted 2 centuries to mastering combat, to serving the Emperor, to becoming a living weapon against humanity's enemies. This mortal had accomplished something beyond that without augmentation, without hypno-indoctrination, without the gene seed of a Primarch flowing through his veins.
"All units," Titus commanded, pushing doubt aside. "Engage."
They dropped from the Thunderhawks in perfect formation, 10 Astartes in full battle plate, their bolters trained on Garou's center mass. Each round in those bolters was blessed, sanctified, designed to kill demons and traitors alike. Garou turned to face them, blood from demon kills still evaporating off his skin.
His expression showed no fear, only interest.
"You're different from the others," he said, studying their armor, their weapons, their stance. "Stronger, enhanced, surgically altered warriors designed for combat perfection. We are the Adeptus Astartes," Titus announced. "Angels of death, servants of the Emperor, you have been found guilty of heresy and corruption. You will be purged." "Heresy," Garou repeated, tasting the word. "You mean thinking differently than your Emperor demands. We mean threatening the survival of humanity with your existence." Funny. Garou's stance shifted into something defensive but ready. "That's exactly what the Hero Association said about me." The Ultramarines opened fire. Garou moved. To their credit, the Astartes adjusted immediately. These were not ordinary humans whose shots Garou could dodge through prediction and speed. These were transhuman warriors with reaction times measured in milliseconds, with aim assist cogitators, with centuries of combat experience. Garou adapted to all of it. He couldn't dodge every bolt, even he wasn't that fast yet. But he could twist so the shots that should have hit his heart hit his shoulder instead. Could deflect around mid-flight with a precise strike. Could predict fire patterns and move to where the covering fire couldn't reach. And with every exchange he was learning, cataloging their reload times, their firing solutions, the way they moved to support each other. The Astartes fought as a unit of perfect coordination, each Marine covering his brother's weaknesses. So Garou stopped fighting them one at a time. He moved between them, forcing their crossfire to risk hitting each other, using their own discipline against them. An Ultramarine lunged with a combat knife monomolecular edge, blessed by a chaplain, sharp enough to cut through tank armor. Garou caught the wrist, redirected the strike into another Marine's bolter. Used the instant of confusion to deliver a palm strike to the first Marine's chest plate that cracked ceramite. Brother Claudius staggered back, his armor's warning runes flashing. That strike should not have damaged Astartes' plate. The mortal had no power weapons, no force multipliers, just technique and strength. Impossible strength. Captain Titus discarded his bolter and drew his power sword. If ranged combat was feeding this heretic information, then close quarters would end it. He activated the blade, its energy field howling to life, and struck with speed that had beheaded Chaos champions.
Garou blocked with his forearm.
The power field crackled against his skin, trying to disrupt molecular bonds. But Garou's cosmic evolution had already adapted to energy weapons from his time in the warp. He felt the pain, analyzed the damage, and in the instant of contact, learned how to resist it. He kicked Titus back with enough force to dent the Astartes captain's breastplate. The fight should have been over in seconds.
10 Astartes against one mortal, even an enhanced one, was overkill. But the fight continued.
Garou was losing barely. The Astartes were too strong, too fast, too coordinated. But every second he fought, he closed the gap.
His strikes began hitting harder. His dodges became more efficient.
His counters started bypassing their defenses. He was learning to fight like a space marine. Then he was learning to fight better than a space marine. Brother Maxius, veteran of 80 campaigns, found his textbook bolter drill countered perfectly. Brother Decius, trained by the chapter's master of close combat, had his knife work turned against him. Even Captain Titus, bearer of the laurels of victory, felt his sword strikes being predicted, adapted to, eventually countered.
"He's evolving," Titus voxed to his squad, his voice tight. "Combat adaptation in real time. Fall back to."
Garou was in front of him before he could finish the order. "You're strong," Garou said, his breath coming heavier now, his body showing damage from bolt rounds and power weapon strikes. "Stronger than almost anyone I've fought. You've refined combat into a science, transformed yourselves into living weapons." His eyes met Titus's through the captain's helm. "But you stopped growing, you reached peak, and you stopped. You follow orders instead of instinct, doctrine instead of evolution." Titus swung his power sword in a killing arc. Garou caught it with both hands, the energy field burning his palms, and held it still through sheer technique and will.
"That's your weakness," Garou said.
"You were made perfect, so you never learned to become more than perfect." On Hydrus the 7th, the Grey Knights arrived with far less ceremony. They teleported directly onto the battlefield 10 warriors in silver armor, their weapons inscribed with true names of demons. Their minds fortified against chaos by methods so extreme that most initiates died during the process. They were the Imperium's ultimate weapon against demonic threats. Warriors who could not fall to corruption, who had banished greater demons and demon primarchs. They materialized around Saitama, who was sitting on a piece of rubble eating another protein bar.
"Seriously?"
he said, looking at the new arrivals.
"I just wanted a snack."
Brother Captain Stern, leader of this strike team, had faced demons for 300 years. He had walked in the warp and returned sane. He had spoken the true names of greater demons and bound them to his will. He looked at Saitama and felt his psychic senses simply stop working. "You are an abomination," Stern declared, raising his nemesis force weapon. "A void where a soul should be. In the Emperor's name you will be unmade." Saitama stood up, dusting crumbs off his costume. "Look, I don't know what your deal is, but I'm really not in the mood." The Grey Knights attacked as one. Their force weapons crackled with psychic energy designed to kill demons on a metaphysical level, to sever the connection between a demon's essence and its physical form. They struck with techniques refined over 10,000 years, with strength enhanced by their holy purpose. Saitama blocked all 10 strikes with one hand. "Okay," he said, his expression shifting from annoyed to genuinely irritated. "That's enough."
He didn't punch them.
He didn't need to. He just pushed, a simple palm strike that every martial artist in human history has thrown 1,000,000 times. The Grey Knights flew backward, their armor intact but their weapons gone, their pride shattered. Brother Captain Stern caught himself in midair, using psychic levitation, his mind racing. The abomination hadn't used the warp,
Hadn't used psychic power. Hadn't used anything except pure, impossible physical force.
"What are you?"
Stern demanded. Saitama sighed. "I already told the other guys. I'm just a hero for fun. In orbit above both worlds, the Space Marine chapters that had deployed these forces monitored the engagement with growing unease. The Ultramarines were fighting to a stalemate against a mortal who grew stronger every second. The Grey Knights, the absolute pinnacle of anti-chaos capability, had been dismissed like children. Chapter masters convened an emergency session. Some called for orbital bombardment, for cyclonic torpedoes, for total destruction. Others asked a question that hadn't been spoken in millennia. If these beings survived the warp untainted, defeated chaos forces, and surpassed Astartes' combat capabilities, were they really heretics? Or was the Imperium wrong? Lord Inquisitor Kryptman reviewed the combat footage for the 17th time, and with each viewing his certainty grew colder, harder, more absolute. The Imperium had faced extinction events before.
Horus's betrayal.
The War of the Beast. The Tyrannid Hive fleets. The 13th Black Crusade. Each time, through faith, sacrifice, and the God Emperor's will, humanity had survived. The method was always the same. Identify the threat, mobilize overwhelming force, and purge it from existence before it could metastasize. These two anomalies followed no pattern the Imperium understood. They could not be corrupted by chaos. They could not be killed by Astartes. They showed power that exceeded established limits without drawing from the warp, without Xeno's technology, without any source the Mechanicus could identify. That made them more dangerous than any demon. Because a demon could be understood, could be categorized, bound, banished. These beings simply existed in violation of every rule. The Omega Sanction, Kryptman said to the assembled inquisitorial conclave via hololith.
We have no choice.
Inquisitor Mordrain, who had interrogated Saitama, spoke from her flagship. My lord, with respect, Subject Sigma-1 has shown no hostile intent. He defended Imperial citizens. He destroyed chaos forces. He may be an anomaly, Kryptman interrupted coldly. You said yourself that psychers cannot read him, that he treats our authority as irrelevant, that he exists outside the natural order. His augmetic eyes gleamed in the dim light of the conference chamber. The Imperium survived 10,000 years by eliminating such anomalies immediately. He's not a threat, Mordrain insisted. He's just lost. Today he is lost. Tomorrow he decides our laws don't apply to him. Next month he decides the Imperium itself is too restrictive. Kryptman's voice was ice. We do not wait for threats to manifest. We eliminate them while elimination is still possible. Inquisitor Kell, who had interrogated Garou, added his voice. Subject Sigma-2 openly espouses anti-imperial philosophy. He called the Emperor a tyrant. He called the Emperor a tyrant. He condemned our entire civilization as oppressive, and his power grows geometrically every hour we delay. He becomes exponentially more dangerous. He also killed chaos cultists, another inquisitor pointed out. Destroyed demons, fought with skill that suggests discipline, not madness. Discipline in service of heresy is still heresy, Kell replied. He rejects the imperial truth. That alone warrants execution. The vote was called. Of the 17 inquisitors present, 14 voted for immediate extermination by any means necessary. The Omega Sanction was authorized. On Cethonus Tertius, Garou sensed the shift before the orbital lance struck. His cosmic awareness, honed to razor precision, felt the buildup of energy in high orbit, calculated trajectory, and realized what was coming. He could have dodged. He didn't. The lance strike hit with the force of a small star, a beam of concentrated energy designed to crack continents and boil oceans. The entire factory district where Garou stood vaporized instantly. The shock wave flattened everything within 50 kilometers. The thermobloom was visible from orbit. When the dust cleared, Garou stood in a crater of molten glass, his body charred. His clothes burned away, his skin regenerating even as the residual heat tried to cook him. So that's your answer, he said to the sky, his voice carrying despite the screaming wind. Anyone you can't control, you destroy. His power spiked. The warp breach he'd been inadvertently generating through his evolution suddenly widened. Not with chaos, with pure, unfocused energy. His rage at injustice, his frustration at oppression, his absolute refusal to accept limits all crystallized into something that made the planet's atmosphere scream. In orbit, the Inquisitorial fleet detected the power spike with alarm. Target survived the Lance strike, power readings exceeding Astartes norms by factor of 17, correction factor of 23, correct. The cogitator stopped updating. The numbers were climbing too fast. All batteries, Kripman ordered.
Full saturation bombardment. Burn that location down to bedrock.
On Hydrus VII, Saitama's treatment was more direct. A full company of Grey Knights deployed, backed by Sisters of Battle, backed by 3 companies of Tempestus Scions, backed by orbital defense platforms. They surrounded the detention facility where Saitama was being held, having been returned there after the battle with the simple request that he'd like to finish his meal in peace. Brother Captain Stern, his pride still wounded from their earlier encounter, activated the facility's external vox. Subject Sigma 1, you are to be executed for heresy, mutation, and crimes against the Imperium. Resistance will be met with total annihilation. Inside the facility, Saitama looked up from his protein bar. I'm being executed? For what? For existing outside the Emperor's natural order.
Saitama blamed.
That seems excessive. Comply or be destroyed. There was a long pause. Then Saitama stood, walked to the reinforced door of his cell, and with a casual flick of his finger, knocked it off its hinges. He stepped out into the corridor where guardsmen immediately opened fire with las guns, their beams splashing harmlessly off his skin. I saved your people, Saitama said, his voice carrying a rare note of genuine emotion. Not anger, disappointment. I stopped those monsters. I didn't ask for anything. I just helped. You are the monster, a commissar shouted, his voice cracking slightly. An abomination that must be purged for the Emperor's light to remain pure.
Saitama's expression flat.
This place is insane. He walked toward the exit. The Grey Knights moved to intercept, their force weapons ready, their minds prepared for a battle that would test every limit of their training.
Saitama walked through them without fighting back.
When they struck with blessed blades, he dodged. When they tried to restrain him with psychic force, he ignored it. When they formed a phalanx to block the exit, he simply walked around them. Not fast enough to be impossible, just efficient enough that their choreographed defense never quite managed to coordinate properly. It was humiliating in a way that defeat in battle wasn't. He wasn't beating them. He was just leaving, and they couldn't stop him. Fire all weapons, Stern commanded, his voice tight with frustration. The orbital platforms opened fire. Lance strikes, macro cannons, cyclonic torpedoes, the kind of ordnance used to destroy hive cities and crack planetary mantles. All of it converged on Saitama's position with enough force to shatter continents. The explosion lit up the planet's surface like a new sun. When it cleared, Saitama stood in the center of a crater that stretched to the horizon. Completely unharmed, looking up at the orbiting ships with an expression that Stern, even through all his psychic shielding and battle-hardened focus, could only describe as profoundly, crushingly disappointed. You tried to kill me, Saitama said quietly, knowing somehow that they could hear him through their sensors. Because you were scared of me, not because I did anything wrong, not because I hurt anyone. Just because you didn't understand me. He crouched slightly, muscles tensing. That's not heroic.
That's not justice.
He jumped. The force of his launch created a new crater within the crater, sent shockwaves that triggered earthquakes across 3 continents, and propelled him into orbit at speeds that made the tracking systems lose lock. He landed on the hull of the Inquisitorial flagship with a clang that resonated through every deck. Inside the bridge, alarms shrieked.
Hull breach, no breach.
Something is on the hull.
Impact sensors indicate.
Kripman stared at the external pict feed showing Saitama standing on the ship's armor, arms crossed, looking directly at the camera. Impossible, Kripman whispered. Saitama raised one fist and knocked on the hull, the way you'd knock on a door. The entire ship shuddered. I'm leaving, Saitama said, his voice somehow carrying through the vacuum in the meters of adamantium hull. I don't want to fight you. I don't want to hurt anyone. But if you keep trying to kill me for no reason, I'm going to stop being nice about it. He jumped again, this time aiming for the planet's surface where he'd sensed civilians still alive in the trenches he'd protected earlier. The inquisitorial fleet watched him go, weapons ready, but nobody gave the order to fire. On Cethonus Tertius, the orbital bombardment had turned 50 square kilometers into a sea of glass and fire. The bombardment had killed thousands of Imperial citizens who'd been in the blast radius. Collateral damage, acceptable losses.
Necessary sacrifice.
Garou emerged from the flames, his body fully regenerated, his power now visibly radiating off him in waves that made reality shimmer. You killed your own people, he said, his voice carrying across the ruined landscape, to kill me. That's what you are. That's what your Imperium does. He looked up at the ships in orbit, his cosmic senses allowing him to perceive the thousands of lives on those vessels, the soldiers following orders, the Inquisitors convinced of their righteousness. I've fought heroes, Garou continued. I've fought monsters.
You're neither.
You're just a machine that consumes everything different and calls it holy. His aura flared. So I'll break you.
Not because I serve chaos.
Not because I want to rule. But because systems that kill anything they can't control don't deserve to exist.
In orbit,
both inquisitorial fleets realized simultaneously that their kill orders had just created exactly the threats they'd feared. The erasure had failed. And now both subjects were beyond angry. They were radicalized. The Cethonus system had been unremarkable before that day, a tertiary manufacturing hub. 17 billion souls spread across 3 habitable worlds, producing lasguns and flak armor for the Astra Militarum. Its strategic value was minimal. Its place in history was non-existent. Then it became the site of the greatest concentration of destructive force the Imperium had deployed in a generation. 12 Space Marine strike cruisers, 47 inquisitorial vessels, 300 guard regiments, Titan legions from 2 Forge worlds. Because the Inquisition was taking no chances, a single Blackstone fortress requisitioned from the Mechanicus at staggering political cost. All of it aimed at 2 individuals.
This is madness, Captain Titus voxed from his position aboard the Righteous Fury *. His ultramarines were deployed on one of Cethonus's moons, tasked with ground assault should the orbital bombardment fail. We're deploying extinction-level ordnance against 2 beings who have shown no intention to serve chaos. They resist Imperial authority, came Kripman's cold reply. That is heresy enough. On the planet's surface, Garou stood in the ruins of the factory district, feeling the buildup of energy above. He could sense the ships maneuvering, the weapons charging, the titanic forces being brought to bear. His cosmic senses painted a picture of the coming assault in perfect clarity. It should have been terrifying. He smiled. Finally, he said to himself, let's see how far I can go. The bombardment began. Lance strikes came first, dozens of them, lancing down from orbit in beams of light that turned stone to vapor. Garou moved through them, his evolution already anticipating trajectory, his body adapting to the heat, his martial arts somehow allowing him to deflect energy beams with precise strikes to their coherence fields. Then came the macro cannon shells, each one carrying explosive force equivalent to tactical nuclear weapons. The entire region erupted in fire. The shock waves flattened what little remained of the cities. The noise was so overwhelming it became pressure. A physical wall of sound that killed unprotected humans through sheer vibration. Garou stood in the center of it, his body glowing with power, analyzing every attack, growing stronger with each adaptation.
More!
He shouted into the storm. The Blackstone fortress fired. The beam that lanced from its weapon arrays was not merely destructive, it was annihilative. Drawing power from ancient Dark Age technology that even the Mechanicus barely understood. Where it struck, matter didn't explode. It simply ceased, erased from existence at a fundamental level. Garou felt it coming, felt the wrongness of it, and for the first time in this universe felt genuine uncertainty. Could he adapt to non-existence? He was about to find out. The beam struck. Reality screamed.
And then Saitama appeared. He'd been on his way to find a way off this insane planet when he'd sensed the massive buildup of energy.
More importantly, He'd sensed millions of people in the cities below the bombardment zone. Civilians who were about to be erased as collateral damage, because the Imperium cared more about killing Garou than protecting its own citizens. Saitama had seen this before, seen so-called heroes cause more damage than the monsters they fought. Seen organizations prioritize destruction over salvation. He was tired of it. He landed between Garou and the Blackstone beam, directly in its path, and caught it with both hands. The beam that could erase continents stopped cold. "This is ridiculous," Saitama said, his voice somehow audible over the apocalypse. "You're going to kill your own people because you're scared of us." He compressed the beam between his palms like he was wrapping up a hose, then threw it back at the Blackstone fortress. The ancient weapon shields, designed to withstand capital ship bombardment, lasted approximately 1 second. The fortress itself, kilometers of archaeotech and irreplaceable ancient systems, began to break apart. The inquisitorial fleet collectively lost their minds.
"Impossible!"
Kripman's voice cracked over the command vox. All fleet elements converge.
"Full assault pattern."
The Emperor protects.
The Emperor protects.
Thousands of voices echoed. The fleet opened fire with everything. Every weapon, every ship. Every ounce of ordnance they'd brought to crack a planet. The space above Cethonus Tertius lit up like a new star as gigatons of firepower converged on two
Points on the surface. Garou laughed with pure joy.
This was it. This was the pressure he needed.
His body becoming something more than flesh, his mind processing combat data at speeds that approached precognition. He launched himself skyward, his leap carrying him through the atmosphere and into the midst of the orbital fleet. A strike cruiser fired at point-blank range with its broadside batteries. Garou landed on the hull, absorbed the impact of the shells exploding around him, and punched through 10 meters of adamantium armor like it was paper. Inside the ship, he moved through corridors at inhuman speed. Not killing the crew, he didn't need to kill them, but disabling weapon systems with precise strikes. A single punch to a support strut could collapse an entire weapons deck. A kick to a power relay could shut down shields. He was learning their technology as fast as he was destroying it. In orbit on the other side of the planet,
Saitama dealt with the problem more directly.
a battle barge moved to ram him, its prow reinforced with blessed armor designed to break space hulks. He punched it. The battle barge, 7 kilometers of Imperial engineering and holy dedication, split in half. Its crew had roughly 4 seconds to register what happened before both halves began a tumbling descent toward the planet's surface. "This is stupid," Saitama said to no one in particular, then jumped to the next ship.
And then chaos arose.
The warp breach that tore open between the 2 planet moons wasn't subtle. It was massive, violent, and carried with it a fleet that had been waiting for exactly this moment.
Chaos Space Marines, Demon engines, ships that screamed in colors that shouldn't exist, all of it pouring through to take advantage of the greatest concentration of Imperial forces in the sector. A Black Legion strike force, led by a Chaos Lord who'd been planning this ambush for decades, targeted the Inquisitorial flagship. World Eater berserkers, sensing the violence, descended on both Saitama and Garou with frenzied glee. And behind them, greater demons manifested, drawn by the psychic turbulence of so much conflict, so much death, so much absolute chaos. The battlefield became 3-way carnage. Imperial forces, already reeling from their failure to stop Saitama and Garou, now faced a full chaos incursion. Space Marines fought demons while trying to target the 2 anomalies. Chaos forces attacked everyone with gleeful abandon. And in the center of it all, Saitama and Garou found themselves fighting not enemies, but a tide. Garou moved through the chaos like a surgeon with a blade, his evolution reaching peaks that began to approach the truly divine. He analyzed demon physiology, learned to strike at their warp-sustained cores, began to develop techniques specifically designed to unravel the metaphysical bonds that held them together. Every second made him more dangerous, more perfect, more absolutely refined as a weapon. Saitama just punched things until they stopped moving, his expression shifting from annoyed to genuinely tired. A bloodthirster descended on him with an axe swing that could split mountains.
Saitama caught the blade, headbutted the demon so hard it dematerialized, and sighed. "I just wanted to buy groceries," he muttered. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it ended, the Saitama system was shattered. One moon had been completely destroyed. 2 of the 3 planets were burning. The Imperial fleet had lost 40% of its ships. The Chaos fleet had been completely annihilated. The Blackstone fortress was drifting in pieces, its ancient systems dead. And in the center of the devastation, Garou and Saitama stood back to back, the only 2 beings still standing in a field of debris and corpses. "You're strong," Garou said, breathing heavily for the first time, his body pushed to limits even he hadn't known existed. "You're persistent," Saitama replied. "We should fight each other, determine who's truly no. Why not?" Saitama looked at him with tired eyes. "Because it doesn't matter, we're strongest, so what? Look what it got us." He gestured at the burning planets, the shattered fleets, the millions dead. "Everyone either wants to kill us or use us, nobody just leaves us alone." Garou was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "This universe," he said quietly, "is even more broken than ours was." "Yeah." They stood there together, 2 beings of absolute power, feeling the weight of something that strength couldn't solve. And across the galaxy, every faction that had been watching the Inquisition, the Space Marine chapters, the Chaos Gods, even the silent Necrons stirring in tomb worlds realized the same thing simultaneously. These 2 couldn't be controlled. They couldn't be killed. They could only be endured. 3 weeks after the Saitama incident, as it came to be called, Garou stood on an unnamed world at the edge of the Imperium, watching a red sun set over a landscape of crystalline formations. He'd spent those weeks traveling, fighting, learning. He'd battled orc war bosses who grew stronger through battle and surpassed them. He'd confronted tyrannid warrior forms that evolved in real time and adapted faster. He'd even found a Necron tomb world and tested himself against technology millions of years old and grown beyond it. Every battle taught him more about this galaxy's true nature. It wasn't just dark. It was deliberately, systematically cruel. The Imperium ground its people into dust in the Emperor's name. Chaos offered freedom through madness. The Xenos races fought for survival with total brutality. There were no heroes here. No justice. Just varying degrees of monstrousness. He could stay and fight it all. Could become this universe's hero hunter, breaking every false savior, every corrupt system, every self-proclaimed god. Or he could do something he'd never done before. He could leave and let them sort themselves out. "They don't want to be saved," he said to the wind. "They want to be proven right that the galaxy is hopeless, that strength only serves power, that evolution means corruption." His cosmic senses stretched outward, feeling the currents of the warp, the tears in reality, the fundamental instability between universes. He could navigate that chaos now, could find his way through the spaces between worlds. He took one last look at the red sun, at the galaxy that had taught him the final lesson he needed. That strength without purpose was just violence, and violence without end was just death. "Maybe I'll come back," he said, "when I'm strong enough to actually change something this broken." He stepped into a rift of his own creation and vanished. On the other side of the galaxy, in a small settlement on an agri-world where the Imperium's grip was loose, and people still remembered how to smile occasionally, Saitama helped a farmer fix a broken tractor. It wasn't heroic. The farmer hadn't been in mortal danger. There were no monsters to punch, no cities to save. Just an old man whose livelihood depended on equipment he couldn't afford to replace. And a bald stranger in a weird costume who happened to have enough strength to bend metal back into shape. "Thank you," the farmer said, genuine warmth in his voice. "Most off-worlders wouldn't stop. Too important, they say. Too busy." Saitama shrugged. "It wasn't hard. Still matters to me." Saitama thought about that as he walked away from the farm. In his own universe, he'd been the strongest hero but felt meaningless because nothing challenged him. Here, he was still the strongest, but now everyone either feared him or tried to kill him for it. Same problem, worse universe. He'd tested the boundaries of reality during the Sea-Thonis battle, felt the instability, sensed the connection back to wherever he'd come from. He could probably punch his way home if he tried hard enough. Leave this grimdark nightmare behind, go back to his apartment, his manga, his quiet life of boring invincibility. But something made him hesitate. He thought about the guardsmen in the trenches who'd offered him rations despite having none themselves. About the civilians who'd whispered thanks even while their commissars ordered them to treat him as a threat. About people trapped in a system so vast and uncaring that simple kindness was an act of rebellion. "This place is terrible," he said to himself, standing on a hill overlooking the settlement.
But the people aren't, they're just stuck.
He sat down, watching the sun set, a normal, orange sun, not the diseased red of Imperial hive worlds or the sickly green of chaos-touch systems. Just a normal sunset on a normal world where normal people tried to live normal lives despite the galaxy's best efforts. "Maybe I'll stick around a bit longer," he decided. "Not to fight the Imperium or chaos or whatever, just to help where I can, the small stuff."
It wasn't much,
It wouldn't save the galaxy,
but it was something.
and for Saitama, having something to do that actually mattered to someone was worth more than all the cosmic battles in existence. In the warp, the Chaos Gods observed both departures and arrivals with something approaching relief. The variables were contained, not eliminated, but at least temporarily removed from their calculations. In the Imperial Palace on Terra, locked in records so classified that only the High Lords could access them, a single line was added to the anomaly registry. **** subjects Sigma 1 and Sigma 2.
Status, unknown. Threat level, absolute.
Recommendation: avoid engagement unless unavoidable. Purge all public records.
Forget they exist.
***, in Space Marine chapter monasteries across the galaxy.
Librarians told new initiates stories of two beings who broke every rule, survived every attempt to kill them, and walked away from the Imperium's judgment because judgment meant nothing to true strength.
Some chapters called the stories heresy.
Others called them lessons. And somewhere in the spaces between universes, in the currents of the warp where reality forgot itself, two legends began to spread. Whispered by demons, shared by rogue psychers, recorded by Xeno's observers who knew better than to speak openly. The tale of the man who could not be challenged, who sought only simple purpose in an overcomplicated galaxy. And the tale of the man who could never stop growing, who rejected every limitation reality tried to impose. In a galaxy built on despair, where hope was a currency too expensive for most to afford, their brief presence had left a question that no Inquisitor could purge, no doctrine could answer. If strength isn't enough to change the galaxy, then what is?
And if it is enough, what happens when someone finally decides to use it?
The 41st millennium had no answer. But it would keep asking.